started, folks. My name is Mike Williams. This is Ashley Levine, and our subject this evening is some pretty scary stuff. It's haunted Koochiching, urban legends, resort ghosts, and the unexplained. Reminder, as I always do before we get going here, is that the bar remains open. This is an open discussion. It's not a lecture, so please give loonies the business. And again, we are filming. The camera's right here out front, so try not to spend too much time in front of it. And your generosity is greatly appreciated for our goodwill offering. Ashley's got some books here for sale. And then we've got t-shirts and sweatshirts for the benefit of the museum, so appreciate it if you purchase those. This program is going to be a little bit different than the ones that we've had in the past, in that I'll do some talking about some scary stuff, and then Ashley will. We'll go back and forth, but when we're done, really appreciate some audience participation, because I know that there's some really interesting stories out there, and if you could offer them up, it would really be helpful. But I'm going to start with one of my favorite haunts, no pun intended. This is the Kettle Falls Hotel. Imagine this scenario. You're 16 years old, late October, in fact, teachers' convention. I'm sure a lot of you can remember teachers' convention. I'm at the old hotel by myself. It's probably 30 degrees, dark, cold, windy night, with my my dog Red sleeping in room number 6, like I said, by myself. And I woke up during the night with Red growling, and I could hear somebody coming up the stairs, every footfall, and then down the hall. And I'm thinking, what in the heck would be coming into this building in the middle of the night like this, especially when the front door is locked. But we settled down a little bit later. Here it happened again up the stairs. And I was well armed. I was on a hunt trip. I had a 12-gauge shotgun and a 22 pistol, and of course, a flashlight. My dog Red. Red's growling again. The doors of the old hotel were always ajar. They never closed tight, so kind of forced it open. Red's at my feet, still growling. We're looking down the hall. Of course, naturally, there's nothing, but just one of those things, a creaky old building, contracting with the cold, who knows. But that went off and on, throughout the night. And for a 16-year-old, it was kind of a scary experience. And then I was joined the nenext day by my buddy Tim Lundeen. We're sleeping in the same room. Nothing like that happened that night, but we decided we had a 30-30 and we had a flashlight or two that we're going to maybe get a deer. So both of us, it was a beautiful night. The moon was out. We were sitting on the front steps of the hotel, and this is probably about midnight. And all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. Just loud, hysterical type laughter coming from that boggy area that's out in front of the hotel. Needless to say, it ended our hunting right there. We retreated back inside the building. But to this day, I've never heard anything like that. And all I can figure is like a screech owl. Maybe later somebody could offer up that something like that would be. But it was loud. And, for a couple of teenagers, it was pretty scary.
So one of the stories that we have is from the Coffee Landing. Everyone knows where the Coffee Landing is located. It's at 444 3rd Street. And it was previously the Rauscher Brothers grocery store. And it was owned by Nick and Joe Rauscher, and they operated the store for over 60 years. And Joe passed away in 1969, and Nick passed in 1987. But some of the reports that have happened in the Coffee Landing have been cold spots, creaking sounds, falling objects. People have experienced like those hair-raising moments where they feel like, maybe someone's close to them and they get the goosebumps. They've also had lights turning on and off by themselves, radios that get turned on and off, or the volume going up and down. And what's interesting about that building is they actually had a paranormal investigation take place there back in 2011. Some people may remember that. It was in the Daily Journal. And the group that came up They are based out of Bemidji, and they're called SIM, which is Supernatural Investigators of Minnesota. And while they were there, they did record voices. One of the voices called one of the investigators stupid. And they found strong odors of cologne they were smelling, and they photographed several orbs. Orbs, of course, are, believed to be balls of energy, spirits moving around. So the team did believe that they have encountered three spirits that reside in the coffee landing. Steph believes that there may potentially be something there. She likes to say that they're friendly, hopefully. Who they are, they don't know. Hopefully, maybe if it's Nick hanging out, it wouldn't be surprising. He spent most of his life in the store, and so maybe he likes to make sure that it's staying neat and orderly, and that people are having a good time still.
That's the coffee landing.
Yes, coffee landing.
I want to go back to Kettle Falls. I know that all of us, especially when we get a little older, we misplace things, and eventually we find them, but sometimes we don't. But back in the early 70s, when Mary and I lived on the Namakan site, the Keeper's house at Kettle Falls, year-round. So this was winter. We made a grocery trip to town, and one of the things I bought was a bag of hard candy, individually wrapped. I think it was butterscotch. And when we got home, I didn't want our two little girls, choking on this stuff. So if we were up there right now, I can show you where I placed it on a shelf in our pantry. And a day or so later, I went to get the bag of candy. It was gone. Naturally, I asked Mary about it. She never touched it. The kids couldn't get into it, but if they did, we'd find wrappers somewhere. It's too high for the dogs to mess with. So this bag of candy disappeared off the face of the earth. I mean, there's nobody else there other than the four of us. So where did it go? But then in thinking about it after, Mabel Williams, she was almost like a second mom to me, lived in that house for 15 years, and it just recently passed away. And she liked hard candy. So I've always attributed that the missing candy to Mabel, that Mabel got the candy, but how else can you explain it? But then another time, this would have been later, and one of my jobs at Kettle Falls, this is summertime, was to stock the bar, clean the bar every morning. And I tried to keep things in order where I'd have 5 bottles of brandy and 5 of vodka, 5 of gin, 5 of whiskey, And we had a limited selection, but quality stuff. And I noticed that to keep our inventory up, I had to put 1 bottle of Smirnoff vodka in its spot under the bar. So I went in the back room, broke open a fresh case, removed the bottle of vodka, set it on the bar, and then I was doing some sweeper or whatever. Then I went back and I'm going to put that bottle of vodka where it belonged. Well, it wasn't there. So I thought, I already placed it. What's supposed to be? Nope, empty spot. So I thought, well, I'm imagining things. I didn't even put it out here. So I went back in the storeroom, and here's the case broke open, and that bottle of vodka is gone. Now, the front door of the bar is locked. Nobody can come in. Back door is where I'm standing. And there's no way somebody could have got in there. So that bottle just simply disappeared off the face of the earth. So I did some thinking about that. And we had quite a local character at Kettle Falls for years. And he had just recently passed away. Art Langford was his name. He used to sit at the end of the bar in that same exact spot where I had placed that bottle. And Art would sit there, and his favorite drink was screwdrivers, vodka and orange juice. And he would raise hell and run people out of the bar with his obnoxious behavior until my dad ran him out. That happened numerous times. So I attributed that missing bottle of vodka to Art. It's the only way I can explain it. But, stuff happens.
So there's a lot of urban legend kind of surrounded around Bacchus and the old AV school. One of these stories, for some reason, it always involves somebody falling and going down the stairwell. There's another story of a boy flipping over the stairs, or there's a report of disembodied voices in the shower. Well, I did find out that there was a small kernel of truth, that there was an actual accident at the end of the late 50s, and there was a gentleman that was killed, but it actually happened at the Old Falls High. And this story was transposed over to the Alexander Baker Building into Bacchus. And I think that that's really interesting that, people took a very tragic event and turned it into a ghost story, and then it became just this perpetuated urban legend over and over. I know that I heard it growing up. I know people before me heard it growing up, and people after me have heard it growing up, because when I was looking for ghost stories, there was a gal that was significantly younger than me, and she was like, "Oh, you tell the story about the janitor at AB Bacchus," and I was like, "Wow, that's still a thing." And there was a story about a little boy that supposedly lost his life in a drowning incident in the Old Falls High swimming pool. I have no idea if that story is true, but people kept saying that there was a pool in Bacchus and in AB, and I was like, no, there was no pool there. There are no voices probably coming from the shower. If they are, that's creepy. And so, very likely that if, I guess I feel like if these spirits are supposed to be present anywhere, they would be present in True Star, and they would be haunting them. So if there's hauntings in True Star, they should let me know, because I think that would be great. But that's where the Old Falls High was. And so, but it's interesting how these stories move from one location to another, and it's very likely because Old Falls High was torn down. Bacchus AB is still there. Bacchus AB is a little creepy now that it's an empty building. Well, Bacchus is still being used, but anyway, there is no janitor. Nobody fell over the side in AB or Bacchus, and there's no little boy that died in the pool in the basement there, because there's a pool. So sorry for anyone who liked that story and liked to tell it to their kids or whatever. It's false.
We used to have some scary teachers there.
Sure.
Well, the original Kettle Falls Hotel was constructed in 1913, and a lot of the haunted stories that we hear are from the original hotel, but it was knocked down by the Park Service in the summers of 86, 87, rebuilt. But the winter of 95, 96, the hotel was supposed to be opened by the Wilson family for winter snowmobile business, but they reneged. And so the Park Service assigned two men, a lot of you know them, Mark Goulet and Russ Waldorf, to be caretakers of the old hotel, or the new hotel, during the winter months. And those guys can tell some stories. I spoke with Mark yesterday. Party would erupt in the bar with the Nickelodeon. Considering that the bar was locked, if nobody's around, they'd hear a snowmobiler come. But they'd go down to the Nickelodeon and start it up running by itself, so eventually they started unplugging it. And Mark was telling me that the front door, on the porch of the hotel, was always locked at night. And they could hear it slamming, and they could hear footsteps. Then they'd investigate, be nobody there, and the door would be unlocked, even after they had locked it. We'll figure that one out. Then there was one night where they heard, they were awakened by the loud crashing of dishes in the kitchen. They investigated, dishes were laying all over on the floor, nobody around. If you see those guys, ask them about it, they've got even more. Ashley?
So, I don't know how many people have ever spent a lot of time down in the North Home area, but I picked up this story from some folks down there, and I think that this is really interesting. If you travel State Highway 1, you just might happen upon what they call the Blue Angel. And it's a little bit of a sad story. So there was a woman who lived behind the clinic in North Home. It's about 1 block east from the Shining Light Cafe. The Shining Light Cafe is right on Main Street, they're kind of their main street there. And it's located close to where this old scenic hotel was. Anyway, this woman lived behind the clinic, and she worked as basically a lady of the evening, we'll say. And she was walking home, and I don't know where she was coming from. I mean, she was coming from that direction, east to the Epi area. I don't know where she was, what she had been doing, but she was trying to walk home, and she ended up dying from exposure. So she froze to death, essentially. And so now, people in that area have reported that if you are driving east towards Epi, you will see her on the side of the road trying to get home. And don't stop and try to pick her up. They say to not do that. But you may potentially run into her. So check out Highway 1. I think it sounds really like a great adventure, and you might see the Blue Angel. So go to North Home.
Does this happen mostly at night?
Yes, it happens mostly at night, they said. It's an evening adventure.
What's that, Ed?
I said tonight would be a good night, nice and cold.
Even a ghost would be too smart to follow weather like this. Oh, I'm going to go back to late night partying at Kettle Falls. I'm going to start here. It's the old hotel with my mother. And there's a photo in here of the lobby. And you can kind of see the stairway. But that's what I'm going to be referring to, of the old hotel. But my mom, and this happened many, many times through the years, would hear a late night party going on in the bar, and Nickelodeon would be going, and you'd get upset because we'd have guests that were trying to, we'd be sleeping right up above the bar, and, didn't want to upset them. So she'd get on her nightgown or whatever, and as soon as she would go down the stairs and then make that turn in the lobby, it would get quiet. And she'd work her way around and unlock the bar, and there'd be nobody in there. I mean, and this happened lots and lots of times. We used to tease her about it. But this incident I'm going to talk about is with the new hotel, and I can give you the exact date that this happened. January 30th, 1993. Some family and friends and I had snowmobiled up to Kettle Falls that evening. Like I say, January 30, 1993. And we were in the bar having a cocktail and going to have dinner. I kept looking at my watch because my father, Charlie Williams, had passed away exactly 1 year. And that day, he died on January 30th, 92, at 7:30 in the evening. So the feelings were kind of strong on my part. Like I said, I was looking at my watch and it ticked on down to 7:30. I thought, what happened right now? So anyway, a few days later, 4 or 5 days later, I was back at the hotel on a trip. There was a young couple running the place at the time, Patty and Shannon. And Patty told me, she says, you wouldn't believe what happened after you left, back last week. And she explained to me that Shannon had gotten up early in the morning to go to International Falls, by snowmobile, to do the banking, pick up groceries, that sort of thing. Get back relatively early in the day so they could cook breakfast for the snowmobilers. She says Shannon got up and left. She's in bed, nobody else is in the building. And a really loud party was going on in the bar. She awake to that. And got upset because, Shannon was supposed to be on his way to town, not bartending for late night snowmobilers. So she got out of bed, put on her robe, got the bar keys, walked down the stairway, got into the lobby, exactly the same type of scenario that happened to my mom, and silence. Worked around the back door of the bar, unlocked it, went inside. It's dark. but she said it was really warm. And it was like there had been a really good party going on in there. And she could smell the beer and cologne and booze and, I don't know, maybe, body odor, who knows. But she said that it frightened her so much that she said the hair was standing up in the back of her head. So she locked up the bar and took off and ran upstairs and pulled the covers over her head. And then she told me, what is this going to do if there's ghosts, covering up underneath the bed covers. But it upset her so much that probably 3 or 4 days after that, she and her husband Shannon, they packed up and left. And she refused to spend any more time in the building. Ashley?
So this story isn't so much about a haunting as it is a real legend that comes from the Algonquin-speaking people, which includes the Ojibwe and the Cree. And this is the legend of the Wendigo. And the term Wendigo, according to the Ojibwe scholar Basil Johnston, essentially means solely herself. And this was a creature that could be either a man or a woman. And it was said to be 5 to 8 times taller than a very tall man, which is, to me, pretty vague. So, I mean, essentially this thing is huge. Other interpretations have this creature being like 15 plus feet tall. It's not physically large or very strong, and its complexion was very ashen gray in color. It's very thin, bony. It would look like something that was basically just recently disinterred from a grave. And it would always have a very strong smell of decay. When the Wendigo was set to attack a human, it would be encapsulated or kind of covered up with a dark snow cloud that would shroud its upper body from the waist up, and a wind would start to kind of come up. And it would start out as just a breath. And then the air would turn cold and it would cause all the trees to crack. I mean, that's when someone knows, like, they're in some trouble. And most victims of the Wendigo would immediately just die from fear. But if they were unlucky and they didn't get scared to death, the Wendigo would essentially deliver a very painful death. They would just kind of rip these people apart with its bare hands and teeth. It's pretty gruesome. And as it would eat this person, the Wendigo would grow in size, and it would also, its hunger was never satiated. It was constantly craving more human flesh. It was said that the Wendigo basically represented not only the worst that a human could do to others, but it also exemplified other despicable traits such as greed and self-indulgence. Now, the Wendigo has been pushed into a lot of popular culture and entertainment. Because of its association with cannibalism, it's been influencing movies. The movie Ravenous is very popular and uses some of the Wendigo elements. And then there's, of course, an actual movie called The Wendigo. There's several of them. A few of them are pretty bad. I wouldn't watch them. And then there are some books like Shadow of the Wendigo or Night of the Wendigo. But if you want to know more and really know more about the meanings and get the real feel for the story, I highly recommend Basil Johnston's book called The Manitous, which we have available here this evening. And he gives a really great account, not only of the Wendigo, but lots of other stories as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, I highly recommend it.
Well, not all of my stories concern Kettle Falls. I've got one about our local Elks Lodge. Back in the late 70s, I took a position there in the winter for something to do, which was, bartending. And I announced to my friend John Toll that I would be doing the 9 o'clock to 1 p.m. shift. And he said, "Oh, you'll be hearing Larry Fogarty come up the stairs." And I had no idea what he was talking about. And unfortunately, with that shift, we had to stay there, even though there could be no customers. So that one particular evening must have been around 40 below. I was watching old reruns, Gunsmoke reruns on TV. And sure enough, all of a sudden I heard this little door that's, if you're sitting at the bar, at the Elks off to the left, it says not an exit on it now, kind of sealed up, but had an old wooden stairway. The stairs was war from, traffic for, 90 years at that time or so, going up and down. And I could hear every step. And I thought, if that door opens, I am out of here. But of course, it didn't open. You can hear every step. Then the worst thing is that right before closing every evening, one of the things that we had to do was to take a pitcher of water and snap on the one light, go down those stairs, and it was a boiler room, very, cement on all sides, and with a single light bulb kind of hanging and swinging, and then pour water in this part of this boiler, because it was leaking. And that room was all full of shadows and incredibly creepy, especially after hearing that traffic on the stairwell. After that, I kind of broke the rules, and I would go and I'd put the water in it when there was a lot of people in the bar. I just avoided how to do it, so I didn't have to be in it all by myself. And I guess that room is still there, and part of that boiler is still there, but they've got a new heating system. So, and I asked the people last night, and nobody's heard Larry come up down the stairs. So, maybe he was a caretaker of that boiler. Who knows? Another Unexplained.
So these stories come from our neighbors over in Fort Francis. They were so kind to share. So this is some things that happen in their own museum. Before it was a museum, it was a police station, and one of their police officers that worked there absolutely refused to work there alone. Didn't matter if it was night or day, because there were footsteps that were heard in the upper story of the building that would walk during the daytime or the nighttime. There are lots of other noises that happen in the museum. Some of them can be explained, some are not as easily explained. They've had students that refuse to work alone or to work nights alone in the museum. When people are on the first floor, the footsteps on the second floor have continued to happen. So that's pretty interesting. And then another story that they shared with us is from the Mackenzie Hospital. That there are apartments on top of the Mackenzie Hospital, and the tenants there had reported some strange occurrences over the years. There was a doctor there named Dr. Mackenzie, and there was one tenant that reported that a spirit was using their own voice, mimicking their voice to call their children. And so the kids would come to the parents and say, hey, you called me, what do you need? And the parents like, no, I didn't call you. And the kids are like, oh no, yeah, you did. Definitely called for me. And so that kind of freaked that family out. And there was another tenant that had reported seeing Dr. Mackenzie repeatedly walking by in a bowler cap, and he would just sort of tip his hat and keep going on his merry little way. And then the owner of the building stated that sometimes when he was in his kitchen, the cupboard doors would open and slam shut, and he always had sometimes this feeling of being watched, whether he was standing or sitting or doing things in his home. He did like to talk to the old doctor, but he never actually got to physically see him, and I'm guessing that the doctor did not talk back. So,
Mary and I spent 20 years at the Thunderbird, and of course we have a few stories about that place. But one time one of our guests, this was in the summer, probably about 15, 20 years ago, came down for coffee. And he asked me, he said, did anybody ever die in room 101? That's the room that he and his wife were staying. So of course I got my attention, but I said, not that I'm aware of. I said, well, this morning, that particular room is like I said, the first room as you walk in the front door, the T-bird on the right, has a sliding glass door and a nice deck out front. But he said he woke up, the sun's coming through, it was a nice day, but there was a young girl in the room with him, in a nightgown, maybe like 10 years old. Of course, he's wondering what the heck this kid is doing in the room, and the little girl turned, and half of her face was horribly disfigured. And he's nudging his wife, saying, you know, there's a kid in our room here, you know, got to see this. Then whatever it was gone, disappeared. So that's why he asked me that question. But to tell you the truth, nobody else ever said anything like that. If they did, I didn't hear about it. They wouldn't admit it. But a couple of strange things happened to me, and this happened several times through the years. Get up early in the morning, go down through the kitchen into the dining room, put the coffee on. You know how you can tell when somebody's behind you? I'm at the coffee machine, getting it set. I was using styrofoam cups. I actually filled 2 cups, one for me and one for the person behind. I turned around, there's nobody there. You know, how can you explain something like that? You didn't know when somebody's behind you. You just couldn't tell. Then Mary and I lived for 20 years in the house that's adjoining the T-bird. It used to be the main lodge. And the front porch of that house used to be the bar, the old Bellhaven resort. It started in the 30s and 40s. But we continually would have traffic on that porch where you'd be sitting watching TV, and all of a sudden, just out of the corner of your eye, you could see that somebody we had windows accessed to the porch, and there were Venetian blinds, but you could just see that faint shadow of somebody going on the porch. And you know, a lot of times it was the cleaning ladies that used it, but then all too many times there was nobody. Just that we would see that shadow and then see that shadow again. And, you know, another thing, how the heck can you explain it? But it was.
So I guess the last thing that I have to share is about our own museum, since we've talked a little bit about the Fort Francis Museum. So when I first got my job at the museum, some of my friends at college, they were like, oh, Mom, that's so cool, maybe your museum's haunted too. Because I worked with a lot of people at Glensheen and things like that. I was like, nah, I don't think so. So it was several months into working there, and I was by myself, and our offices are in the basement. And we have a door dinger system, so that way we know when someone comes in. And the way that my desk is situated, if the dinger system doesn't work, I can usually hear the backdraft of the door closing. So I'm sitting there, you know, listening to podcasts and working and doing my thing. And all of a sudden I can hear footsteps in the museum, like someone's walking around. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like I didn't hear the door, dinger system didn't go off, so I decided, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go upstairs. Go upstairs, check to see if anyone's there. No one's there. All right, cool. So I just thought, oh, maybe I'm just hearing things. So I went back downstairs, and this happened several more times. And finally, I'm like freaked out. I flipped on all of the lights. I grabbed a flashlight. I checked the whole museum. I was like, hello, is anyone here? Like, you better not be messing with me. Like, I don't know what's going on. And so finally I was like, okay, who's ever walking around needs to go sit down, look at an exhibit, because I'm tired of coming up here. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. So, you know, fast forward, it's Monday morning, and I'm talking to Ed, and he's asking me how the weekend went. And I was like, oh yeah, it's really good, but, you know, this weird thing happened. Like, I kept hearing footsteps, and I'm telling him about the foot traffic pattern, and he's just sitting here listening to me like this. And I'm thinking, oh, cool, he thinks that I'm a wackadoo. And he's like, oh, yeah, that happens. That happens all the time. But you know, the thing is, you just wait. You just wait till you start hearing the voices, Ash. Because they're going to start talking. And I was like, and then he goes like he's going to walk away. And I was like, no, wait, come back here. We need to talk about this. Voices. And it's not okay. So I don't know if there's ghosts in the museum. Ed's pretty sure that something's walking around. I've heard balls dropping, things like rolling around on the floor. I've had like weird smells, like a burning smell. For the longest time, I thought it was lights or off-gassing. I don't know what that is. You know, from like off-gassing from the materials. But I don't know what the smell is. And then another time Ed likes to use this an electric adding calculator. And I was sitting there, and one day it just started going off in his office, and I was like, oh, look at the time, it's 4:30, time to go home. So, that's our little museum.
Has anyone here heard of the Alex Johnson Hotel in Rapid City, South Dakota? You should go on the internet, look it up. It's supposedly the most haunted place in South Dakota, especially the 8th floor. Well, a few years ago, my wife Mary and daughter Betsy and Mary's sister Kathy and I are on our way to Estes Park, Colorado for a wedding, and Betsy booked us in deliberately at the Alex Johnson and the 8th floor. I mean, it was just a nice old hotel. A lot of celebrities, I guess, have stayed there. I guess Cary Grant, and I can't think of his female co-star, stayed there when they filmed the movie North by Northwest. But anyway, we're on the 8th floor. And imagine this, we're in a bedroom, we're sharing a bath, another bedroom. Each of our rooms have access to the hallway. And of course, access in the bathroom. So I get up a few times during the night to use the bath, and I noticed right away how considerate that they were there, is that you didn't have to snap on a light or anything, because every step I would take barefoot that was illuminated. There's a little squares tile, you know, the 1-inch square on the floor. But whether I was sitting or whether I was standing, I would have this blue light was just uniformly around both of my feet. And I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from. You know, like it's coming underneath the door, or I can't see any source whatsoever of this light. But I thought, I mean, this is illuminated and it's really nice. A little guy like me not to stumble, but anyways, couldn't see my own feet. So we stayed there 2 nights, and this happened, you know, every time after dark when I was in there. So anyway, we're on our way to Cheyenne, and I just happened to mention to the ladies that it was really nice that they had that type of lighting on the floor where, you know, where you wouldn't stumble. Nobody else saw that light. It didn't work for anyone else. So I'm going to explain that. I wonder about that to this day. But the 8th floor of the Alex Johnson, look it up on the internet. It's quite interesting.
Williams?
Yes.
Same place where they caught this one being buried outside the hotel where you shot at, or shot killed.
Well, that I think was in debt. That was in debt.
During a certain time of the year, the moonlight shines from out there through the window, it shines right outward, buried.
Is that right?
That's the
Yeah.
hotel.
Are we going to, where's Jeff? Do I have a microphone?
Yep, right here.
Oh, you're right here? Got it? I know my sister Peggy just got really, really.
Yeah, is that the same hotel where, that you're talking about?
No, well, I'm not sure what town that hit my.
It's in, down in Rapid City.
Oh, is he?
Yes.
That very well could be. You know.
It's really strange, because once a year, the moonbeam comes in from, shines through 3 windows or whatever, and shines right on where Carl Joseph's buried.
That's interesting. I know that my sister Peggy over here she's got a Sasquatch story that's incredibly funny. Come on, Peggy, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yes.
Well, if you think Mike is crazy, listen to this. On a bright sunny day in mid-September of 1977, I experienced the strangest encounter of my life while driving on Highway 4 between Duluth and Aurora, where I was living at the time. Highway 4 is a shortcut to Aurora, 50-some miles of blacktop that crosses peat bogs and cuts through dense forest. That afternoon, I caught Highway 4 and headed due north to Aurora. It was a beautiful sunny day, and there was no traffic as I passed Island Lake and further up Highway 4 into the wilderness. As I rounded a curve where the road crossed a large peat bog, there to my astonishment, I saw a creature. Tall, probably 7 or 8 feet tall, black and hairy with long legs and arms. He strode out of the bog with his arms swinging, crossed the road in 2 or 3 strides not far in front of my pickup, and disappeared into the bog. I couldn't believe my eyes at the sight, and I stopped my truck where he had passed and rolled down my window. I was looking to see where he had gone when it hit me that this probably wasn't a very good idea. I rolled up my window and sped out of there. I was still shaking as I drove the 50 remaining miles to Aurora and parked the pickup at my apartment where I lived with my first husband. The words tumbled out as soon as I entered. He listened to my tale, thought for a moment, and then said, of course he believed me, but that it might be best to keep the story between the two of us. I agreed, as I could hardly believe it myself, and I didn't want people to think I had lost my mind. This is at the end of the story. I was good to my word and never mentioned the incident to a soul until many years later. It was the fall of 1984, and I was dating my current husband, Steve Vigran. We were spending a lot of time at Kettle Falls at the time, and one night I told Steve the story. I swore him to secrecy, and he solemnly promised he would never repeat what I had told him. Little did I know that he told all my friends and family at Kettle Falls, and together they devised a plot to reunite me with my old friend Bigfoot. One weekend that fall, a good friend of ours rented a Bigfoot costume in Minneapolis and brought it to the hotel. The idea that once again I was to be the only person to see the hairy monster. I learned later that on Friday night, my friend had the costume half on in the men's bathroom off the bar when he heard me bid everyone good night and head off to bed. He had planned to stand outside the back door of the hotel and surprise me. The plan had not worked, so the next day they devised another. Debbie and Randy Szyminski were working at the hotel that summer and living in the Namakan house. As part of the plan, they invited Steve and I over to the house to play cards. After a while, they suggested that we all go back to the bar at the hotel for some socializing. Bigfoot would be digging in the garbage can at the dock on the Rady Lakeside. Steve and I were to ride in the trailer, and it was his job to get me to look up when we passed the dock. He would then conveniently look away, so I would be the only person to notice Bigfoot. All went well as we drove down the hill and rounded the corner to the dock. You know the saying about the best laid plans of men and mice. The major problem with this plan is that no one had given a thought to the dogs who trotted alongside the trailer. When he noticed Bigfoot, Chuck's huge Chesapeake, Jake, perked up his ears and growled underneath his breath, as did our big German Shepherd, Malamute Hogan. A major problem with the Bigfoot costume is that the wearer had to try to run with 4 blocks of wood under his feet. As he tried to escape the dogs and clumsily made his way toward the dock, another problem arose when some duck hunters pulled up in their boat with their guns in them. Bigfoot stopped, put up his hands and yelled, Please don't shoot. We had all witnessed this, and needless to say, I have never laughed so hard in my life. I laughed so hard that I fell back in the trailer. I clutched my stomach and laughed all the way up to the hotel and all the way into the bar. Moments later, my old friend Bigfoot stomped into the bar, came to my side, and slammed his long, hairy arm down, yelling, "I want to buy my friend Peggy a drink." We all had that drink, and we had a great time catching up. How wonderful was it that my friends and family would go to such elaborate means to reunite us.
When I'm on the lake in the summer, a lot of times the subject of Sasquatch or Bigfoot comes up, and customers want to know if I have any Bigfoot stories, and I say yes. They kind of roll their eyes, but I tell Peggy's story, and they all really get a kick out of it. Thank you, Peggy, that was great. Well, there's got to be somebody else.
I do.
Oh, yep, over here, over here.
On the theme of Bigfoot, my husband and I own the Arrowhead Ultra, and we've had a lot of racers from around the world up. And when they get near the finish line, they're exhausted. And I don't know if you know Mike Hedke at all. He likes to play a lot of jokes on the racers. So last year he brought a Yeti costume, and he's too big for it, so we got one of the women racers to put it on, and we spec her back further in the woods, and as a racer was coming up, getting about 5 miles from the finish line, they get what they call bonk, so they sometimes hallucinate. And so she walked across the trail in this Yeti, the white Yeti costume, and she's just swinging her arms, walks across the trail, stops and looks at him, and then just keeps on going into the woods, and then hides down in the woods. So nobody said anything, and he comes across the finish line, and he's up in the hospitality suite at the end, and he goes, "So, anybody else see Bigfoot out there?" And we about died. We were just cracking up, because then they were worried about somebody shooting her, so they put blinkies on her so that she was safe out in the woods.
I think that would be a problem. Some Jack Pine savage with a rifle out there and just threw him in.
Be the perfect one person to tell the truth.
We must have somebody else with a ghost story. You told me a story one night about you down on the lake, and then this crash came down and followed you. Yeah, okay. Dave Trumpeter's got a story for us. Dave, was this before or after your visit with the Christian Brothers?
It's so hard to be a drinker, you know, because everybody picks on you all the time. I got one story to tell about coming down Rainy Lake, and I was chased by a UFO. Now everybody, they don't believe in that, see, but I was alone in my boat. I was heading towards Rainier, and my boat, I think, one I had then, goes about 40 miles an hour, open boat. And all of a sudden this thing got in behind me and started catching up. And I thought first, well, it must be a Piper Cup, one of the guys is out flying or something. Then I looked, that's not a Piper Cup. What the hell is it? And it was a kind of on a flat machine. It had a lot of windows in it, lighted, but it could follow me. And I thought, God damn, this is scary. I'm gonna get the hell out the lake. I'm gonna run for City Beach. And then I thought, no, this thing is behind me. If it can do what it's doing, it won't do me any good to try to run for the beach. So I just kept going, and all of a sudden this thing turned north and went over towards the causeway of the Highlands, and it, just like a snap of a finger, it was gone. And I was sober. I was not drinking. But I came home and told the story. Nobody believed it, but I know it. My brother's been, older brother had seen that thing. I don't know what it was or who's behind it, but I believe in UFOs.
Well, the only story I have of the UFO is I was ice fishing with my father-in-law Howard. This would have been, oh, maybe, let's say 1980, just before Christmas. Just north of Rabbit Island at Kettle Falls. I'd used my airplane to fly up there. It probably got to be about 3:30 in the afternoon. It was turned into a beautiful sunny afternoon. And off to the north, it's called Vague Point, Friendly Passage, that area. There was a dark object moving down the lake at a pretty good clip, probably about 50 feet off the edge. No real shape to it, just kind of maybe oval shape, but dark. It was heading west. And I mentioned Howard. I said, I mean, I never really ever seen a UFO, but look at that. Not a sound, and all it is this thing hovering going down the lake. Well, I thought nobody's going to believe this anyway, so why did I mention it? So anyway, we flew back to, a few minutes later, flew back to the ski plane base at Jackfish. Here's Wayne Erickson, the pilot Wayne Erickson. He had this great big Christmas tree tied to the left side of his aircraft. And from our angle, we could not see the airplane and we couldn't hear the airplane. All we could see was that Christmas tree levitating down the lake. So that's my UFO story. if we hadn't seen Wayne to this day, I'd be wondering just what in the heck did we see over there. So I think some of these stories, that's how they get going. At least we explain that one. Any others?
Well, let me just embellish what Ash had to say about our museum in the Falls. But being out here for as long as I have, I've had many opportunities to be in that building at virtually every hour of every day. And there are unexplained circumstances. And you can actually trace them. There are 3 different episodes of walking, because one walks down the east side, one walks down the west side, and one walks down part of the east side. And there's also conversations, and the conversations are just audible enough to where you can hear people talk, but you can't understand what they're saying. And I guess the occurrence that happened the evening before the county centennial, about 2 o'clock in the morning, was the one that stands out in my mind, because I was there putting up an exhibit similar to this, so I had to run up and down the stairs and cut the photographs off and take them up, put them on the board to make sure they fit in sequence and so forth. And every time I went downstairs, you could hear the walking and the talking. So I went up about the last time. I had one last panel, and I said, okay, I'm going home for the night. And all of a sudden, it was just dead quiet. So they must have knew that they would have the facility to themselves for the couple hours that remained of the evening, and then I'd be back in the morning. So there is an occurrence there, but it's always coming out of the back, and three distinct episodes.
Is there any history yet of that site prior to the construction?
Prior to that, there was nothing there except the Quonset huts that they built for the returning veterans.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it was just it was started out as the first baseball field in International Falls. It was built by Mandel. It was a huge facility. And then it was just an open park, and there were skating rinks in there, and then they built the Quonset huts, and then they put the museum. And so there's there's no other buildings there.
No. Interesting.
Anyone else have anything back here?
Hey, Ed, I got one, I got it.
Oh, Mayor Dave again.
Yeah. I used to have an aunt and uncle, Ed and Irene Sherwood. They lived over in the house that Ed lives in now. And of course, at that time I was about 10 years old. And my whole life I've been trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And I really don't know even yet. But the old Grandpa Trumpeter had died. And those days they dressed him up for burial. He's in the casket, but then they bring the caskets in the houses. So they brought Grandpa in the showroom house and he's in there. Well, we had to go there every night and just pay our respect. And I had to behave myself, which was the hard part. But I thought, this is kind of weird. But the undertaker came to the house every day and kind of freshened the body up. And anyway, one day Irene said, well, we can bury Grandpa now. And said, well, what's the difference now? Well, she said, I was washing dishes last night on that lakeside, and that window was open, and I heard his soul flew out through the window. That's all I got. That's what she told me. She said it made a big whoosh sound as it went through the screen. So away went Grandpa, and then they put the remains away the next day. I think it's kind of interesting, but the whole family of trumpeters is interesting.
Hey, Dave, and now you want me to go home tonight? And it's pretty dark, you know.
Well, the only reason I'm here is you told me that you canceled my membership of it. I didn't show up.
Oh, is there anybody else? Well, we have another program now in an hour. You're certainly welcome to stay. You know, you might not have a seat, but with this nasty weather, I would guess you've had one. But because we're getting a few no-shows. Oh, Carrie Meyer.
I'm a believer in Sasquatch. Things happen that you can't explain. I saw what I think was a Bigfoot on Highway 6 between Big Fork and Northland. It was an upright, dark, in a ditch. It wasn't a bear walking upright. It was really, well, 30 years ago. And at our farm, I made a track, casting of a foot, not extra large, 12, 13 inches. Had 6 toes, one toe was just a little odd. It wasn't like flex. You could see the mud. I was tracking a wolf in the Jeep, and I was watching this go through a hayfield, double field, sharp on your bare feet, if you were bare feet. And there was wolf, and then there was bear tracks, long stride, not extra long, 7, 8 feet, long walk though. And then the feet were odd, in the hayfield. So I made that plaster cast. That was back in the late 70s. But all the people that maybe don't want to believe, the latest research from Duluth is, and then this Manitou storybook, is he possibly is a shapeshifter. He may not always be a Sasquatch. He may be a timberwolf or bear. Something to you're thinking, non-believers. Who knows?
Who knows? Thanks, Mary.
Anyone else? There's gotta be stories out there.
Well, I hope nobody has bad dreams tonight.
Yeah, and I still have to go home. Thanks, Dave.
Well, thank you, everybody.